Welcome to the Dealing with Goliath podcast. Our guest for this episode today is Mr. Roy Sexton. Roy is the Director of Marketing at Clark Hill Law, which is comprised of over 650 attorneys in 25 offices throughout the US, Mexico, and Europe. With a passion for solving problems, improving culture, facilitating business growth, and collaborating on long-term strategy, Roy has been a marketing, communications, and strategic planning professional for nearly 20 years in fields such as consulting, healthcare, the legal industry, and college advancement. Welcome, Roy. That's quite an array of different experiences in there. That's quite something.
Well, what that is evidence of is I tend to overwrite my sentences.
You're there with the legal guys with a lot of long sentences. Yeah,
That's right.
None of this Hemingway short, crisp, punching sentences.
Yeah.
None of that. No.
No, I like clauses, lots of them, and lists. I like lists.
Love the lists. Excellent stuff. It's probably a good place to start, actually, because we were talking about this in our earlier correspondence, that you have a wealth of experience, but even just starting off on your education career into your professional career, you have an undergrad in English and theatre. Then you have an MA in theatre itself, so went more specialised there. And then you did a little bit of a pivot to an MBA in Michigan. So very interesting. So can you talk us through some of the headspace, some of the decision-making there?
Right. I like to double down on skills that are not marketable. Just see what happens. I also like to wait for you to take a drink of whatever you have there. What are you drinking, by the way? What is
this is just a Nespresso coffee.
I'm drinking Pepsi Max. Are we allowed to do product placement?
I guess we are.
Now they can pay us. They can subsidize this.
They can pay us later. Yes.
Yeah. But no, for me, I'm an only child, and I have wonderful parents who just said, do the things that make you happy. So I'm grateful for that. But the downside of that is you're in college, and I was in college on scholarship, and I loved college. I went to a small all-male college. It was sort of like Goodbye, Mr. Chips. It was that kind of an environment, or Hogwarts, if you're a certain era, I suppose. And I loved it. It was in Indiana, but it had kind of an Ivy League feeling on a budget. And so 4 years came up, and I had not really thought about internships or career. I loved literature, and at the time, it was the early 90s, I was studying a lot of Shakespeare. And I was doing a lot of feminist studies with Shakespeare, Camille Paglia, Foucault, some of those types at the time. That we were all into unpacking, whatever that meant. And so I was very interested in that. And my junior year, they were doing The Merchant of Venice on campus, the theater department. And I thought, well, I've been writing about Shakespeare. I should be in one. I should try it. And I'd not done theater. I did one production in high school. They did Annie, Get Your Gun without music. That's the kind of high school I went to. Annie, Get Your Gun does not have a great book, by the way. So why you would do that without music, I don't know. But we did. And I thought, well, I'm never doing this again. So I get to college. My junior year, they're doing Merchant of Venice. I audition, and I get Graciano. And for the Shakespeare folks in the audience, he is the resident smart aleck of the play. He gets the great lines. He gets the laughs. And I fell in love. And so my junior and senior year of college, I was in every play I could, took every class I could. But as all things, I was a late bloomer. So I was a little long in the tooth to go, I'm going to go be an actor, or I should have probably taken that more seriously. And so I then hit the snooze alarm on college and went to Ohio State and got my master's in theater history and criticism, thinking I would teach or go into academia. And then after 2 years of that, I was like, well, theater programs are being shuttered in schools across the land. I mean, what am I thinking? And so I pivoted, to your point, went back to my undergrad, and they were building up a advancement team for a capital campaign. And so while I was there, I got more on the business side of things. Deloitte was on campus recruiting. I have talked my way into jobs I'm supremely unqualified to have. That was a good example of which. And then I moved up here to Detroit in 1999 to work at Deloitte. Was in their healthcare practice, and then that led to a 10-year stint for a healthcare system in planning and marketing. during that time, my husband said, could you get your MBA? He's an engineer, so he was on a career track his whole life. He does not understand my path at all, which has been very much, that's fun. Let's try this. Let's do this. So I did get my MBA through University of Michigan. Those of you who know the rivalry between Ohio State and University of Michigan, it's pretty thick.
So you defected to the other side, did
apparently, I'm a theater guy, so I didn't, it's nothing to me. Football, for all I know, it's soccer. But I just don't, I'm not into the sports rivalry. But anyway, I got my MBA. And then that got me on a more career-oriented path. And after a certain point, I sort of put my resume out there. I loved the marketing planning. I love storytelling, which is how I sort of feel marketing and planning in any organization, business, nonprofit, whatever. You're really telling that organization's story to whatever the consumer-facing side looks like, and helping them understand how to access what you do and celebrate the best of what you do. So I've always enjoyed that aspect of my business work. And that was kind of how I put myself out there and ended up at a law firm. And then it's been about 10 years now I've been on the legal side of marketing and planning. So
it's very interesting. That's fabulous. As I said, the connection of story with marketing. It's one of those areas that people wouldn't think of as a very intensive marketing niche, but it is that. It is a niche, or a niche, as Americans would like to say. What are there particular differences with trying to market legal services compared to many other areas of services?
Yeah, especially when you think of the different kinds of law firms there are. The first law firm I worked at was mortgage foreclosure, which is a pretty insular space to be in. And again, the target market is B2B in that world. And it really is law firm that's dealing with the foreclosure process with the bank that's making the loan that now needs to go into foreclosure. So you've got a pretty tight audience you're marketing to. Whereas when I was in healthcare, it was consumer facing. It was billboards, it was television ads, it was, right. So I would say, to simplify things grossly, what I find changes most dramatically are the vehicles you use to tell the message. The concepts and principles remain the same regardless. If your audience is a small group of mortgage lenders, if it's a large group of industry leaders that we might be pitching here at Clark Hill, if it's a set of consumers trying to figure out to use your emergency room at a hospital, there's a group of people on the other side of that conversation that you have to reach. And you have to get in the psychology of what's going to motivate them to come to the emergency room, to send their mortgage foreclosure matters to that firm, to call Clark Hill and say, I don't understand what's happening in the labor and employment space with COVID. Can you help walk me through what I need to do to make sure my employees are safe and that I'm safe? But whatever it is, they have a need, and the marketing person's job is to understand their psychology and to understand the psychology of the people I work with on a day-to-day basis. Because I think what I find in all of those instances, the hospital system, the 3 law firms with which I've worked, the people inside the organization think they know what people outside the organization want. 9 times out of 10, they have no idea. They want to tell their story their way, as opposed to having somebody who come along and edit it or direct the show. I mean, I tend to think of myself as either like the stage manager, or when I'm full of myself, the director of the show. It's like, I'm not on stage here at Clark Hill. The attorneys are. But the attorneys need someone to say, those 3 things are of interest. The other 33 things on your bio that you want your mother to see when she checks the website every few months, nobody cares about. Your clients want to know X, Y, and Z. These are the problems they're facing. This is what I'm seeing in the zeitgeist. Here's the client survey tells us. Pulling that data together to say, this is what's driving the client to make the purchase decision, or the switching decision, or the expansion of business decision. And unfortunately, it's not that you edited your law journal and they don't care. I know it's important to you. They don't care about that. What they care about is an article that makes it very easy for them to understand how to solve a problem on their own. And in so doing, then say, I want to call that attorney because my problem just got that much more complicated. And now I need to pick up the phone. I like the way that person addressed me. I think the other thing, and it's a bit of a ramble, I'm sorry.
No, not at all.
I find that in that storytelling moment, it's again like theater. You've got a lot of actors that want to bring on far too many props that they don't need because it makes them comfortable. And I had a director once, Rex McGraw. He taught me three very important things. He said, if you're gonna get the audience to cry, don't cry. Try to fight crying on stage. The audience relates to you trying not to cry more than they do the indulgence of crying. Give the audience the same show closing night that they got opening night, that same level of energy. So I bring that into work. Wherever you are, bring the same energy you brought 2 weeks ago. And this is the part that I get to. Don't bring a prop on stage you're not going to use. You know, because the audience is going to fixate on the gun above the mantle.
It's the classic Chekhov. Yeah.
So a little bit of that was with attorneys. They want to throw everything but the kitchen sink at something to compensate for their anxiety over an activity that's not comfortable for them. They get the credit for selling their business. I don't. So they're on the hook for building a book of business. I have to help them get there. And they're going to want to buy koosh balls and sponsor things and take people to dinner and spend all this extraneous money. They're going to want to spend all that kind of money. But then when I tell them you need a CRM, oh, that's so expensive. Why would we spend that money? I'm like, but you're going to sponsor a cow at a rodeo? Why? You know, so you have to pull them back and say, remember what your audience wants. They want what's in your head. They're not buying your personality. Hopefully they like you enough. They want to work with you. They need to get to know you. But at the end of the day, they want to know you're smart. You're going to deliver outcomes. That's what they're buying. They're not buying that you gave them chocolates or a pie or a gift. That's not why people hire attorneys. But attorneys think that's the case. I don't know if you remember the movie Dumbo from the Disney movie. And the little mouse gives him a feather. And Dumbo thinks he can fly as long as he has that feather. And then one day the feather goes away and he can still fly. That's what attorneys are like. They want that feather. And I'm like, you don't need that. But what you do need is this, people need to see you fly. That's the part they're interested in, not the feather you're carrying around. So I'm sure your audience I lost them about 5 minutes ago. But
no. I think the element of storytelling is powerful. And as you said, that tapping into the actual needs, not what you think they need,
right,
but what your audience think, or in this case, your clients or potential clients, maybe even more importantly, what they actually need. How is that quite difficult? Do you have to be quite diplomatic in clarifying the difference?
Far more diplomatic than it probably comes across right now. But I do respect and greatly appreciate the I like working with smart people. I get to work with some of the smartest people. And attorneys are funny. They're clever. They're linguists. They like art. They like creativity. Most of them, you scratch the surface and they have some really interesting hobbies.
Absolutely.
And that has probably been the Machiavellian approach I've taken. I mean, you can see that I'm in my basement where my husband sends me every day. He just hears me yapping all day long. He's working upstairs. I'm working downstairs in quarantine. But, I go into an attorney's office that I haven't worked with before, and I look at what's on their walls. I see what their interests are, and they have them. And they are like me. They like to have trophies around of things that remind them of happier times. And so that gives you an in with an attorney to say, let's get to know each other. And I can then understand what motivates you and drives you. And you build that trust. So then you can have the honest conversation with grace, with respect, saying, I get what you want to do. Let's pull it back. One of my favorite questions is, what problem are we trying to solve here?
Right.
So, because attorneys think they're doing you a favor coming to you as a marketer with a fully developed idea. And more often than not, the idea isn't quite, there's a nugget in there that's good, but their execution isn't right. But they're used to managing summer associates and giving them full, complete direction. Don't make marketing people that way. Give me a goal. I'll give you a sense of the best way to get yourself out there. But if you've tied my hands because you're really wed to this event or this activity, and attorneys are really good at arguing, oh, I get so much business out of this. Well, can you demonstrate to me where? Yeah, a lot. I'll get back to you on that a week later. Can you tell me the names of the clients? Oh, they're really great. They're wonderful clients. I'll get that to you. So again, you got to unpack that and say, well, what are we trying to do here? And trust me, help me help you. Let me in. And I'm going to give you far better exposure through my techniques than the $5,000 ad, because there are all these attorney lists all the time, and attorneys are a soft touch for a list. You add an attorney to a list and they're like, oh, I get a plaque for that. I'll give you $3,000. I get a half-page ad in a program no one's going to look at other than other attorneys. Let me write the check. And I have to say, hey, I will get you as much exposure on social media with the credential. I'm glad you're on the list. That gives me a reason to say congratulations, but I will get 10,000 views on something, and they'll be the right views versus you spending $3,000 or $5,000 on a half-page ad in a program that is only going to be. You remember the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin? He gets the phone book, and he's so excited that he's in it. I'm in here. That's what those attorney list publications are like. They stick them in a business magazine. There's 30 pages of tiny print of all these attorney names. They've paid money to be in there. And they think some business person is going to flip through there and go, oh, that name, I want to work with them. No,
This is the guy.
Then you're the other. They just want to see that their name's in there, the other people. So it just, that stuff drives me bonkers. But again, I have to be gracious, and I think I am me. You're getting a sense of me. Why anybody hires me, I don't know. But I think people find it comforting that I comment things in this way. I'm not a slick marketer. I don't claim to know all the things, but what I know, I know. So let's work together.
Absolutely. It sounds like a great strength is it being, that, for want of a better word, being that authentic. It's an often overused word these days, but it very much rings true. You're talking about working with, as I said, an awful lot of very smart people. In my experience with lawyers and doing trainings with lawyers and attorneys, I'm always impressed at just how creative their creative problem-solving abilities are. I'm always surprised their level of innovation. It's as I said, really off-the-wall solutions for things, really quite impressive. But that said, they are paid to argue for a living. So I can imagine when they push back, it can be quite something. So do you have a particular set of strategy? I don't mean to give away too much of the gems
and
there.
And I tell them these things. I tell them openly. Nothing undermines that sort of argumentative press than disarming humor. And I can only get there. I am very self-conscious for a while. I go back to, you guys have different sort of levels in your school system. For us, it's called middle school or junior high. That awkward, horrible time between like 12 and 14 where you just don't want to live. That period of time. If I'm in a new group of people, I go right back there all over again. And I'm like, no one wants to eat lunch with me. I don't know how to comb my hair. I don't know how to dress. So it takes me a little while, and then I get that comfort level with people. And then, yes, they come at you with a fully baked argument. And now you work at a place long enough, you see the name come up on your phone, and you're like, oh boy. But if I come back to humor, if I come back to coming from a place of grace and compassion and saying, well, what are we trying to do here? And just speak to fine, you want to argue with me, I'm not arguing with you. Now, at some point, it does kick in. I will argue back, but I've at least been kind and gracious, and I listen up to a point. And I have found that there is a punch of humor that can always get people back on track. I shouldn't bring up this anecdote, but there was a wonderful woman that I worked with that when I started, she was sending pies, very expensive pies, to all of her clients.
Right.
And it was a lot of money on pies. And I said, oh, why are we doing that? And she goes, oh, they're the best pies. These clients love these pies. And it wasn't just the cost of the pie. The pie was being taken out of a package, wrapped in saran wrap, ribbons putting on it. The marketing team were writing handwritten. I mean, it was not just, because that's the other thing, attorneys, they want to do everything. When they do something, it's got to be top of the line.
Top notch,
even though no one cares. So it was the money of the pies. It was the team time that could be spent getting articles pitched, getting media, things that would matter. Anyway, so I listened to this for a bit, and I said, well, I bet those pies are really good. I love pie. So already you can see I'm kind of going, however, if your clients are only hiring you because you're sending them a pie every year, I have a bigger concern about the quality of the work and what that says about us and our confidence in who we are and what we do. Oh, well, maybe I shouldn't send those pies anymore. I said, I wouldn't. Now, that was, I don't know how I got there. It's like, I'm not a religious person, but it's like sometimes there's a beam of light that goes into my head and goes, say this. And, but you have to listen long enough and understand that the person thinks they're doing the right thing. So don't make fun of it. Don't attack. Don't undermine. But at least understand what they're trying to do and then elevate them to a different path. And a lot of times with marketing stuff, people have latched onto something that they think works for them. My mom has the phrase, I'm snapping my fingers to keep the elephants away. There are no elephants. It's working, and it's that kind of thing. Well, I've been doing this. I've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce for 400 years. That's why I have the business I do. No. I had another attorney come to me who was obsessed with his SEO ranking. Very prominent attorney, great, followed for what he does. Why am I not coming up first in Google searches anymore? I said, if you're getting your business only from Google searches, given the quality and the caliber of what you do, I'm concerned about our business strategy here. We could put a lot of energy and time into Google and SEO, but as you and I know, Google is changing the game every 3 minutes to drive us crazy and make us spend a ton of money on advertising. I don't need to do that. I can do through a full court press, writing a bunch of articles, getting us out there, using the SEO that's already built into LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter to help us show up in search. And by the way, a Google search is not your best marketing or business development strategy. So when I said to him, if that's how you're getting your business, I'm concerned. I haven't heard another word about it.
Okay.
And again, I'm not diminishing that. It's like, it's a point of pride for you,
Exactly.
but it's not actually driving any business.
And I love the way you bring back the humanity, literally, that you bring a humane element to the whole process. So you're not saying you're wrong and that's a waste of time. You're bringing in that compassion that, as you say, you see exactly where they're coming from. You see, okay, you're trying to do, like the lady with the pies, full points for differentiation and being memorable. But as you said, if that's a lead thing, it's a different story. It also sounds like context is a big thing as well. Again, being high in SEO is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But if that's the primary sole thing, then maybe there's an issue there. Absolutely.
My first firm they were publishing a quarterly magazine. A mortgage foreclosure firm was publishing a quarterly magazine.
Right.
For no small amount of change, for a client base of about 500, maybe it was 1,000, I can't remember now. And we were already, it was 2011, we were moving into a space where people, I don't know about you, sometimes I like getting a print magazine, it's nice to sit down with them. For the most part, I've read all the articles in Entertainment Weekly by the time I get the actual issue, because they've already been all online.
Exactly.
I said, guys, we're putting a lot of energy into the content, that's great. But we're spending a lot of money to produce a magazine, half of which come back because the people in the mortgage foreclosure industry move around so much. We get a lot of return addresses. Why don't we stop doing this? But it was for a while. Yes, but people love this magazine. They look forward to this magazine every month. I'm like, I've had 3 or 4 people do, or they're being nice. Like, thank you. You sent me a magazine. Why are you doing a magazine? And we stopped doing it at a certain point. But I had to give something in its stead and say the content is worth. We're going to get more eyeballs on it, moving it out of a printed piece. But again, it's and something that worked 10 years ago might have worked 10 years ago, but you always have to.
Now. But again, I love the principle.
I'm sorry.
I love the principle that, as I said, they were proud of the articles,
right.
the quality content that maybe people were like, oh, I did pick up the magazine, which seems a bit daft, but that was actually a very good article. So the principle is there, as you said. You're actually praising that. It's just changing maybe the channel or the format or whatever. So no, I
say a very American thing that's going to be a compliment, but probably won't sound like it to your ears. What I love about my European friends, my boss is in Dublin all the time. I mean, she's Irish, and
right.
and obviously you're British. Did you know that? But there's a wonderful way that, especially people in the UK, but I think throughout Europe, they can just, my in-laws are Italian, they can work just a little phrase in there. Well, it is daft, but and I'm like, oh, I wish I aspire to that, where I could just calmly say a sentence like my boss can, and just, and you go, oh, that is daft. You're right. I stop doing it. So I'm learning something from you. If I could just work in,
work in the flip side that's maybe not so complimentary. It's that other side, the other edge of the sword, as they say, or
Yeah.
the
In
double edge. Yeah.
the American South, there it's bless your heart. That's their version. Oh, bless your heart. They don't
Bless your
mean it.
heart. Very good. Very brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. I'm gonna. One of the questions I love to ask people who have expertise in a field, because I love to learn more and more on these insights, and one of them is about common myths or misunderstandings or misconceptions that people often have. What do you find either about marketing or maybe more specifically about lawyers? What are some of those big things that people often get slightly off or just very, very wrong?
Well, one that we come up against all the time, and then it reaches the point. It's like, are we the only people who care about this distinction? There's an anecdote I've used far too much. I'm going to use it again here, and those who've heard me before are going to go, "Oh God, here comes the Disney story." Um, I love Disney, and I obviously love Titch. And Walt Disney was building Disneyland. I assume this is true. And there was Main Street and whatever's Tomorrowland is to the right, I think. And there was a bed of flowers, and people were walking through the flowers, and the gardeners all came and said, "Walt, we need a fence around these flowers because they're getting walked on." And Walt Disney said, "No, we need a sidewalk there." And I think about that a lot. Like, we do that a lot in corporate, and I'm about to do it myself. And I struggle with this. Like, are we fighting an uphill battle and we should listen to our own internal consumers and stop trying to distinguish this? Or should we keep fighting the good fight because it's an important enough distinction to make? And I don't know. And what I'm about to say is the difference between marketing and business development. That means something very distinct, at least to those of us who do that, particularly in the legal space. Although I think generally, when we do orientation with our attorneys, I have a peer who leads business development and I lead marketing. We also find she's a woman, I'm a boy, and often because of the inherent sexism in the world, people always come to me before they come to her, and I'm like, no, we're peers. She does not report to me. I do not report to her. We are peers. Can we get that through our heads? These are two distinct disciplines. And we describe it this way. Marketing shows you where the door is. Business development helps you walk through it.
Okay.
So my job as a marketer is all the fun stuff. Another person said to me once, "You marketers make the attorneys feel good, and we business development people have to tell them the truth." And it's kind of, I am the P.T. Barnum. I'm the one who gets the noise. I'm the one that everybody wants to get an article placed. They want to get pies sent out. They want to do these things that feel fun. They want to have parties. And a lot of it's stuff I'm like, I wouldn't do that. I'm not an event planner. Why are we having parties? Why are we having Christmas parties? Who cares? But they come to my side of the team for that. The bios, the photos, the website, the brand, all the fun stuff. The business development people are the strategists. They're the ones who come in and sit down with the attorney. Again, the attorney's the one who gets the credit for what they bring in. None of us do. So if I'm an attorney, I need to sit down and have a hard conversation, just like I would with a fitness instructor or a dietitian. Here's how you, in a disciplined way, grow your book of business. You have to have a plan. You have to have a steady drumbeat. You have to make phone calls. You have, the stuff that isn't fun. Just like I would love to have muscles and abs, but that means I have to stop eating fudge brownies and run and do sit-ups, and none of those things are going to happen. But the brownies are the marketing and the sit-ups are the business development. And so if you really think about those two disciplines, they are complementary. We create the tools and the mechanisms that should complement what the attorney does. So the attorney wants to jump over business development and come up with, let's send pies. Let's have a party. And the business development person is pulling them back going, wait a minute, before we spend money on pies and parties and things, what are we trying to do here? What industries are important to you? What are your targets? How are you reaching them? Let's take time to learn how to play the piano before we say we're having a concert at Carnegie Hall. I know my metaphors are so mixed.
They're great.
But
Keep the metaphors coming.
That to me drives me bonkers all the time. And I think it's in many industries, but legal, they want to elide all of it and just say, well, you guys are just marketing. They dismiss it. It's just marketing. Isn't it just marketing? I pick up the phone, just do what I need you to do. And it's like, no, we're here because we have an expertise and we're going to make you better. We're going to help you achieve those long-term goals you have for yourself as opposed to the sugar rush that my boss would sometimes call it, because they get something right away and they have something right away and they feel like they did something interesting. It is just that to me is the big challenge we face in the legal side of things. So.
Very good, very good. And I'd love more thoughts on what advice you'd give with having to work with people, particularly who are very bright, particularly who have very strong opinions, often with a huge amount of experience. It's that kind of thing where, people who are very accomplished often think that their
You know
expertise
everything.
and insight in one
Yeah.
domain naturally carries into their expert and insight in another. And you mentioned your approach about being very humane, very self-deprecating, and very human in that approach, which is lovely. Are there any other thoughts you'd have for people?
Well, I think you also have to be not afraid to toot your own horn. So
Okay.
I'm a weird mix of things. And in second grade, Mrs. Edwards said I tell these stories because I think they tell a lot about my psychology,
Yes.
or I think they're fun anyway. There was a kid, and I was a bookish kid. I wore penny loafers and carried a briefcase. I was more of an adult in kindergarten than I am now, and that was my thing. I read. I worked on this part of my body. But on the playground, there were, rough tumble kids. Chad Rice, I'll call him out. Chad, hi. He kicked me in the shins on the playground, just because kids do that. And we were even friends. I was like, what? Well, when we got into class, we were in reading circle, and Chad couldn't read.
Oh,
I could. So there was my victory. I'm reading, and I lean over to my friend Ted Beer, and I say, Ted, Chad is dumb. Now, I didn't really think Chad was dumb, but he just kicked me in the shins. So it seemed fair. And Ted, my friend, when Mrs. Edwards says, what did Roy just say to you, Ted? Ted says, Roy said Chad is dumb. I'm like, thanks a lot. What I learned, and then Mrs. Edwards that night called my mother and said, Roy needs to learn how to be humble. And I didn't know what that meant. And my mother was very protective, and she's like, he does not. And I'm like, well, maybe I do a little bit. But what I take from that moment is the humility is kind of what I lead with, because I know nobody likes somebody to go, look at me, look at me, look at me. We have to talk the attorneys out of that. They think that by leading with, I'm very important and I've got all these accolades and everybody loves me, they're going to get business. Nobody wants to talk to that person. But they want to know you got it in the background. So for me with the attorneys, being accessible and approachable and a decent human being for the most part is great. But then I get to do things like this. And I'm not shy about pushing this out on social media and letting the attorneys know. Now there's a delicate balance, because they could very easily go, you're out there too much. And I'm waiting for that day. But they also do look at, they are very, because they look at those things on their own CV, they look at them on mine. They look that I'm on the International Board of the Legal Marketing Association. They see that I'm on the board of Ronald McDonald House and Mosaic Youth Theater. They see I've written a couple of books that only 4 people bought, what I did. They see me out there writing articles and being asked to speak on issues, and that adds that air of, but I never bring it up. When I'm sitting down with them, I don't go, well, you should listen to me because I was just interviewed today. They don't need to, they know what's happening. They don't acknowledge it, never really. They don't ever go, but I know they know what's happening, because I hear from other people that the attorneys are like, many of our attorneys are fascinated by you because they want to do what you do for yourself.
okay.
And teach them how to do that. And I do. And I say, this is what works for me. And I'm not afraid, just as I am with you, to lay it bare and go, this is what works for me. I'm an introvert. I'm in my own head. So I have to give people a point of access. And then once they're in and I feel comfortable with them, they see that there are layers of crazy. But they see there are layers there and they go, oh, he's got 2 graduate degrees. He's done a lot of things. He's asked to do more. Maybe I want to listen to him, even though I don't want to let him know I'm actually listening.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And
That's a very...
the other thing is, I'm okay not winning. I think people get themselves in trouble trying to win an argument. I know that I've just sold the farm and everything. I know that in winning the argument, sometimes it drifts away. An attorney doesn't really ever want to say, you were right, I was wrong. But
Right.
they quietly drop it.
That's
fine.
it's the classic marriage counseling thing of,
Right.
do you want to be right or do you want to be married?
That's right. That's
you have to
right.
choose the battles, and yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But on that, just to pick you up on a point that you made there about the volunteer work or nonprofit or charitable work, what do you feel that brings? Is it just is it an escape? Is it a completely different headspace? Is it a feeling of giving back, or how do you feel that it brings you value personally?
It's all of the above. I won't lie, there's a bit of ego involved. It's nice to be asked to be on a board, and
Sure.
I've been on boards now maybe 10, 15 years. The first few boards I was on, they were local theaters, and the board was, a committee that was fighting over what play we were going to pick for the fall. But as my life has evolved, I've gotten to be on sort of more corporate or more community oriented boards, which I much prefer. So I'm gratified that someone says, "Hey, you're connected, you make a lot of noise, we'd like you on our board." But then once I'm in it, I also like getting to know the people. I like cohort learning. I do better in a group that I'm with. I liked my MBA for that reason. I've done some leadership programs that you're just with the same group of people. That's where I do best. I get to know you as a slow drip over time. And then we're sort of always tied together. So I like that about board work. And I do like, and I should lead with this, but it's third in my list. It tells you something about me. I like the fact that what we're doing does have a positive impact. Like I like that Ronald McDonald House. We had a niece who had asthma as a child, and her mother stayed there. But otherwise, we don't have that much of a connection to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, and when I can empathize with the situation a family must be going through when their child is very, very ill, and to be able to go to a place and lay their head down and have somebody be kind to them and give them food and have them not worry about those things for a little bit, that does speak to my heart. That's the storyteller in me. That's the person who's lived through bad things and knows how hard it is to feel isolated and just to have somebody show some kindness. And I think the present moment we're in as a culture, global culture, that those bits of kindness are so important. People want to argue, they want to fight, they want to win their battles, and they're forgetting we need a warm touch. We need someone to say, "I love you." We need someone to say, "Hey, you're going to get through this moment right now." And so I like that about Ronald McDonald House. The Mosaic Youth Theater has a similar mission in that in that, not exactly what it does, but it is offering arts education in Detroit, primarily to kids whose schools got rid of the arts because it couldn't afford it. And for me, theater has informed my business life probably far more than my MBA. My interest in reading an audience and telling a story, all of those skills, I think I use every day. The MBA was a credential that had people go, "Okay, you're not a complete flake." And so I like that Mosaic is taking kids who are just like, I had parents who had me read books and watch movies, and I benefited from that.
Mm-hmm.
We're able to do a version of that with kids in Detroit who, if they go into arts, and we've had some Tony Award winners, we've had some really accomplished actors come out of that program. And we've also had some amazing community and business leaders come out of that program because they're set on a path to say collaboration is valuable, working as a team is valuable, doing that with limited resources, because theater, we never have anything to work with in theater. So you've got to make magic out of nothing. And those skills, and to be able to do that in a collaborative fashion, that really benefits you in life. So I in those two instances, there are specific reasons once I get past my ego and the sense of being part of a club that I like being involved with those. So.
Excellent. And that brings me to another thought is, what do you believe that most people don't? Do you have a particularly unique take on, again, whether it's legal, whether it's marketing, whether it's the impact or application of theater principles?
I believe, one thing, and this may be awfully specific, I don't like when people hire based solely on technical skills or in a fairly linear way saying, well, this person has done this job before, so I'm only going to hire people who've done that job before. I'd rather, I did a production of The Mystery of Edwin Drood a few years ago, and I had one of my favorite theater experiences. And the director, he does a learning development in his day job, and children who have learning challenges, and actors are not dissimilar. So he got such good work out of us because he structured the program, our rehearsal, I call it program, the rehearsals differently. You usually do a theater piece, you'll go one day music, one day choreography, one day acting, and every week is like that. He didn't do it that way. Only time I've ever had this experience. He did all the music first, and we spent 3 intensive weeks. It was hard music, and we learned that music, and we had it in our bones. And he said, you get off book on the music. And then we spent 2 weeks on choreography. So we got the music in, then and none of us are dancers, so we had to, and then at the end, we added all the scene work around it. And I felt so confident and so certain of what I was doing because of that learning model. Now, where I'm coming to on the hiring piece, I asked him after it was all over, I said, how, you framed this really interestingly. I feel like you got the best out of me I've ever done. I loved the people I got to work with. What is your trick? He kind of smiled and he goes, I cast for culture, not talent. And I thought, well, thanks a lot. But he goes, no, you sing fine. You're great. You got talent. You have to have a certain level of talent.
Sure.
But I'm casting you because I know you're going to be my quarterback. You're going to get along with people. You're going to have everyone else come along behind you. And I said, well, that's a compliment. I appreciate that. And I think about that when I'm hiring people now. It's like, I want someone who's going to fit in with the team. I can teach them. I learned these skills. No one taught me. People took chances on me. I was an English and theater major, and people gave me a chance at Goliath. They gave me a chance at Oakwood Healthcare. They gave me a chance at Trot or Kill. And I've never been a conventional candidate. So why would I suddenly get conventional when I'm hiring other people? And I've gotten, when I listen to other people in hiring, and this has happened a couple of times, I always kind of regret it. That if I go with my instincts, that person was the person we want to work with. No, they don't come with the resume that fits perfectly the job, but we can teach them those things. I can't teach them how to be a decent human being and someone who works well with others. That's
a very good point.
And so that's I don't know if it's unconventional, but I'm solidifying it because it wasn't really clear in my head until the last couple of years, where it's like, look for the culture fit and assume a certain amount of talent, but. Of course. So.
I love that. It actually corresponds with a book I read there recently on rebel ideas. And one of the points in that is exactly what you're saying about hiring people to fill in your blind spots for that diversity of insight. And maybe that comes from experience or background or whatever. But as you said, people who don't just think like you, which is similar to what you're talking about. Just a last thought on, if someone who wanted to get into marketing, into better storytelling, so they're with you in taking that humanity approach, having humility, and then trying to tap into what the audience really, where they're coming from, what their needs are. Are there any particular books that you'd recommend, any particular resources?
You do. So how long do we have?
Let's go with 3 key ones then. Otherwise,
all right, we're actually gonna go with 6, but I can do it fast. Okay. But before I get to those, my texts that inform me actually aren't the conventional ones, although I have some of those. Mm-hmm. Like The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman, which is now 20 years old. I loved that book.
I have it here above my head.
That book changed or it solidified a perspective I had, which was the disruptive nature of communications technology and what that does to tribalism. And obviously, we're living through that right now. I found that book fascinating, and it kind of gave me that aha moment about how you can use the platform to connect with people if you feel, in an isolated way or whatever, and you can bring the world together. I thought it was a fantastic book. But there are other things like, The Prince by Machiavelli does inform a lot. It just does. The Allegory of the Cave is something I come back to a lot. The Misanthrope by Moliere. There are just things I've read in my life that got under my skin. To Kill a Mockingbird, the movie Penny Serenade. They're just texts that do inform my worldview and the way I approach things. But that's not what you asked for. So I have.
Very interesting though. But thank you. Yeah, that's
so
great.
This is going to be like QVC. Do you have that over there, or the Home Shopping Network? So
yes.
I'm going to hold up some books.
Get it now. The clock is ticking.
This one just came out. The Productivity Pivot. Jay Harrington. If you're not following him on all things, you must. His wife does all the design work. She is also a genius. So everything looks beautiful that they do, but the way he approaches this, he's an attorney who now does business development and marketing, and he doesn't do it in that sort of off the shelf, here's a recipe book. He really gets you immersed in the brain patterns that will help you be successful as someone supporting people who need to understand these skills to succeed. So this is called the Productivity Pivot, and it's really designed for attorneys. But as a marketer, I would highly recommend build a profitable legal practice by selling yourself. You need to know what he's telling people. Read this. Just came out. Okay, book 2 of a few. And of course, these are all friends of mine, so this is shameless.
Oh.
Deborah Perone, Best Practices in Law Firm Business Development and Marketing. What I love about this book is she is one of just a decent soul and a great human being, and she shares her own sort of experience. It opens with her going into her first law firm like 1988 or 1989, and having her desk be in like the broom closet and moving things to the side because they didn't know what to do with marketers. And so it charts her growth. She also brings in content from other people, and I think it's really well done. This is very important. Gina Rubel, Everyday Public Relations for Lawyers. I'm a big fan of media and public relations as a tactic. Getting that thought leadership out there and the third-party validation of the media saying this attorney's very smart on a topic, that then I can repurpose for social media and marketing purposes. And this is a Bible for how to do that kind of work.
Excellent.
I'm not done. Sorry.
Oh, there's more.
The Talent Emergency by Nicole Martin is about what we were just discussing. So I got through that one quickly, but check this book out about sort of casting for culture. All right, pandemic. Julie Savarino, Survive and Thrive Post-Pandemic. I also have a blurb on the back. That's not why I held it up. But she's here locally in Ann Arbor and a business development legend. And she talks about, in this current moment, what do you need to do to be prepared? Now, these are fun books at the end. Finally, 2 things. Despina Cartson, another legend in the legal marketing space. It's called the Last Night's Soup Run. What this book has nothing to do with marketing, except she's a genius chief marketing officer in the legal space. But she is also an incredible humanitarian. Her favorite quote is from Mother Teresa, if you can't feed 100, feed one. So she, 15, 20 years ago, set up this soup run in Manhattan once a month with a big group of people who go from New Rochelle churches out to Manhattan and bring food to the homeless. And her whole point is, I want to treat people who are in inhumane conditions as people. And they are my guests, and I want them to feel loved. And she's amazing. And finally, because I have to, my own mother has written these 2 books.
Oh, wow.
With an old typewriter. And I love this one, Misunderstood Gargoyles and Overrated Angels. I mean, you talk about people who've influenced you in your life. My mom and her worldview, which is very inclusive, very interested in our own personal history and how that informs our future. These are all a series of essays of a very liberal, progressive woman growing up in conservative, small town Indiana, and what that meant to her and how culture informed that. So when I think about books that have influenced me and continue to influence me, I'm always going to treasure these because it's, her own personal history. There, it's got like 7 or 8 books in
7 or 8. A beautiful array there, nice across all sorts of different domains. So thank you very much.
And I get nothing for that. And I get no cut of the profits.
You get no cut.
Even though I know every one of those authors.
Well, then the very last question. Is there any question?
Ask me any more questions, admit it.
Well, the very last one, just to finish off, because I do want to respect your time. I know you've a whole multitude of appointments coming up. So is there ever a question that you're waiting for someone to ask you that they never bloody ask you that question? What might that be?
That's a really good question.
What question are you dying to be asked?
You might have stumped me, and you even told me what you might be asking in advance. I should have thought about this. I guess the question I never get asked is, how do you really feel about this, Roy? Sorry, that's a bit of a left turn. It's like
it's quite a layered question as well. How do you really feel? So.
But it is. I mean, people, I think our nature is, and my nature is just to kind of come in behind and go, okay, let me get through this moment I'm in with the person I'm working with and get back to because I crave those, I live for those silent 20 minutes, where I don't have anybody talking to me, which sounds awful. And there's misanthrope. That's why I like that place so much. I don't think we ever ask people enough, and I don't feel like I'm ever asked enough. How do you feel? what do you think down deep? We tend to steer into the situation we're in and try to massage it toward an outcome. But we never really want to honestly know. Like, there was a situation that arose last night that I won't go into detail about work-wise, where I just wanted to say, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
But you held it back.
And to be able to say it and to be respected for that kind of candor. I just don't. I think as a culture, globally, we claim to appreciate that kind of candor. But when someone is that honest, and that's what The Misanthrope is about, by the way, if you've ever read Moliere's piece, it's just someone who just says, Bartleby the Scrivener is another piece like this. It's a Herman Melville short story where, I don't know if you've ever read it. I think I'd prefer not. The entire short story is him saying, I'd prefer not. And so he's at work, whatever a Scrivener is, right? I should know. He writes things, right? They would go, I need you to do this for work. I'd prefer not. And they try to fire him. I'd prefer not. And it sort of becomes satire because at the end he's sort of like Rip Van Winkle, and they're carrying him up on a chair to close the business, and he's like, I'd prefer not. That's his answer to everything. But we don't really let people speak their truest minds more often than not. And I wish we could. I wish we did. And I wish, I guess, I felt confident whether I'm asked or not to say, you know what, this is what I really think of this situation. Please keep employing me.
Here's the official answer. Here's how I really feel about it.
I don't think I quite answered your question the way you'd expect.
No,
but I liked it.
That's a good one. That is a very good one because, as you said, diplomacy is in the workplace also for a reason, though, as you said, because people like to keep their jobs and not offend their colleagues too much. Again,
I'm not going to change my tune all of a sudden, but I do think we could do more of that, where we just say to people, this is safe. Tell me what you really think and feel right now, and I won't judge you for it. But I don't think we're comfortable with doing that. Most people, I'm not. I don't want to know.
well, that's the thing. When you flip it the other way, sort of, you have to be brave to ask, as you say, someone else. Okay, I hear what you said, but what do you really think? You're exposing yourself to something that could properly wound you. And you do. Takes bravery, takes courage. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I'll never leave the house again.
Yeah. As I said, if you want people to ask you, maybe you need to do the asking first.
Nice. This has become therapy. It's really helpful.
Well, on that note, I will pause because I know you have a meeting to go to, so I want to respect your time. But thank you so much for being a guest on the show. That was absolutely fascinating and very enlightening. So thank you very much. And
well,
cheers,
you are
Roy.
an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I lied. There is one more question. If people listening to the podcast want to get in touch or
they don't want to
learn more about you, some reason,
nope, we're good. We don't need to meet him.
They can't go away.
Yeah, they're like, oh no, not him. I would say I'm, all social media. I'm very open to invites, and I'm on all platforms, and everything's public. So you can find me on Facebook. LinkedIn is probably the best approach.
LinkedIn, yeah.
And then Twitter. Or, you can always drop me an email at rsexton, SEXTON, @clarkhill.com.
Super.
Certainly love to hear from you. So.
Outstanding stuff. Thanks a million, Roy.
Well,
Cheers.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.